Hello, Maverick traders. It is Rob Reinhold, and here we are already in the middle of September, and let's go over what the markets did today. Another big day. We've just been having great trading markets really all summer long. I know summer's over, but the trading market is still fantastic. So let's take a look at what we saw today. Now, the biggest thing we saw today was just negativity across the board. So as you see here, the S&P was down over 1%, the VT down 1%. Now look, those don't look too bad, but at one point, the markets looked pretty good in the morning and literally just sold off all day long until we closed basically on the lows. Cryptos have been weak. We've been talking about how bad cryptos look, but look at gold, look at oil. Oil's had some news out that there's been more supply than the markets expected. So oil's been down. Here it is down at, the 83, 84 area. When we take a look at the news, first thing we got this morning was retail sales in the US. Now, it was a little bit mixed. The headline number came out better than expected. The headline number takes in a lot of things that are volatile. And so when they take those out because they say, hey, these fluctuate quite a bit. If we take these out and look at the core goods, retail sales actually missed pretty badly. So at first it was a good number, but then when people looked under the surface, they said, hey, this isn't that great of a number. And as I said, the equities sold off all day. Now let's talk about what happened in the currency market. The Bank of Japan, there's rumors out there that they are going to come in and intervene. Now, if you don't know what an intervention is, now we all know that in an intervention in our own lives is when people sit down, someone with a problem, and they say, hey, you've got a problem, and we're going to help you. It's not that dramatic, but in the currency market, what it means is that right now the yen is selling off badly. The yen value has gone down about 30 or 40% over the last 18 months. Now that's starting to put some pressure on the Japanese economy. And so what happens is the central bank, they'll come out and actually spend money to buy up the currency. And that's what the intervention is. They'll buy up the currency, pushing it higher. Most of the time we've seen central banks try to do interventions, they've ended in disaster. We saw the Swiss National Bank do this, and it ended in disaster in 2015. There's a very famous story where George Soros broke the Bank of England because they were trying to prop it up, and he was taking the other side of the bet, and he won. So this intervention, it is going to give the yen a little bit of a floor in the short term, but I don't think there's going to be anything they can do in the long term. So let's take a look at the charts. We'll look at the equity markets first. And here we have the S&P, and you can see we are right back down to these major support levels. We bounced off these levels here a week ago, and here we are right back down to them. If we break, which we will likely do tomorrow, boy, there's not any support till really right around this 3,800 area. So we think that is where the next stop is for the equity markets. If we take a look at the VT, the world index, as you can see, we're not as weak as the S&P is, but it's still plenty weak. We're below the 20, we're below the 50, everything's moving lower. We think this is going to break as well. Next lows down here are the June lows on the world index. If we jump over here and take a look at the cryptos, we talked about, once we go below 50 period moving averages, that's kind of the line in the sand where we say, hey, no more being long. So really, we had a brief push above the 50 here, but you can see we're right back down. We are headed down to the support here on the crypto basket. We think we're going to break that and possibly head down all the way to the June lows. Again, this is the crypto basket. This is for cryptos equally weighted all the way down here. So as you can see, lots of bearishness, which we have to reflect that in our market outlook. We're below the 20-day moving average solidly. We are now below the 50-day moving average solidly. We don't yet have both trending in the same direction. We're close. We are going to get across here with the 20 and 50. But once that 50 starts to turn down, we will go to a -3 and be even more bearish. Let's take a look and see what's on the calendar for the rest of the week. Tonight, retail sales out of China. Now, typically this isn't that big of a deal, but right now the market is so hypersensitive and we're seeing lots of volatility that all of a sudden a lot of reports that may have just flown under the radar, they're going to be watched. So tonight, Aussie, Kiwi are going to be very sensitive to this Chinese retail sales. I actually like the trade here. Aussie, Kiwi have been very weak. We've been short them all week, and we think they're going to continue lower. but I wouldn't make any trade until I see this retail sales report and the price action after that. Other than that, for the week, we got UK retail sales tomorrow, and then consumer sentiment in the US. It doesn't matter. No one's going to care about that. Friday, markets rarely bottom out on a Friday. We're likely going to see a move down on Friday and probably a gap down on Monday, and then maybe that could be a equity market bottom. Until then, we think there's going to be some pressure on these markets. Let's take a look and see what happened in the currency world. This is where we've stood all week. We've talked about being long Swiss franc. It's been a great trade this week. We've talked about being long dollar. It's been another great trade this week. Euro was actually the best trade over the last 24 hours. We've liked all of those long, and we've liked Aussie and the Kiwi on the short side. So today, the cryptos we know had a bad day, led lower by Ethereum. Now, typically, Ethereum holds in much better than this, but they actually had a little bit of news over the last 24 hours. They had a fork where they actually split off and updated some technology, and this has obviously created a little bit of selling in the main contract of Ethereum. But most of these have just been pushed down from the overall equity market weakness. If we go over here to the foreign currencies, we see that the euro, Swiss franc, and dollar, these are the three currencies we like this week. They all performed very, very well. The weakest currencies were the Aussie and the Kiwi, which we said these are likely going to be the weakest currencies this week. So let's take a look at each one of these individually and see if they've changed. I'm going to run through the cryptos real quick. Now look, we already had these all at a -3 as a sell. They all had down moves over the last 24 hours and closed on their lows, so there's not going to be any change here. Here's Bitcoin on a 4-hour chart. We've got a 13 EMA, we've got a parabolic SARS, and we've got our RSI. All three of these are pointing to lower. Lower on Bitcoin. Bitcoin Cash was the best performer. It was the best performer today out of the cryptos, but it still went down. It still is weak. As you can see, they're flattening out a little bit, so maybe it's not as weak as the others, but this is not a buy. This is not a buy here. This is a sell. We move on to Ethereum. This is where the actual velocity was today. You can see there's been nothing but selling here really since the 12th of September. Once these peaked out and started to turn over, you should have been short or not long, and we got a big drop today off that fork. Let's finish up the cryptos with Litecoin. Everything's going lower here. Lower EMAs, lower parabolic SAR, lower RSI. They're all a sell. So let's jump over to the dollar. Now the dollar was on the top of our list all week, and the dollar's been really good all week long. So this is where we started the week, and you can see we've just had a nice run up. We had a little bit of a base here. We are now starting to break out of the top of this base. We've now broken out of the top of this base, and we think we're likely to head up to the last highs we made, which are about another 0.5% higher. So we like dollars to the long side. That looks good. Let's talk about yen. Now, yen is one, it's a tough call. Now, the reason I say it's a tough call is because there's a lot of things swirling around the yen. And when you got a lot of things swirling around, remember, when you look at a chart, this is clear. It's clearly made a reversal. We now have EMAs moving higher. We got parabolic SAR moving higher, RSI above 50 moving higher. Technically, this is totally a buy, and it is a buy. The problem is when you have a currency that has so much news going on around it, what happens is news, it doesn't care about technicals. This could have any sort of jump up or down over the next 24 hours, and the technicals aren't going to show you anything. So while the yen is a buy here, I think you have to be very wary and know that at any time something could come out on yen. And again, the technicals don't matter when news comes out. I wish I could come on and say I now like yen long, which would be something I haven't said in months and months. I need to wait and see what happens with the yen. I think it's way too early to call any sort of bottom on the yen, but I do think this rumor of intervention will put a floor under the yen, and you can see how weak the yen has been. The yen has been extremely weak over the last month and a half. I think it's just a little too early to call a floor. The technicals are saying buy, but I'm not going to touch it until I get a little bit more data. Let's move on to the euro and Swiss franc. You can see the euro had a run higher, and now we've just had a base. So we've just based here since about September 8th. We've moved sideways in this area, but we're now starting to get a little bit of momentum. We're above a parabolic SAR. Our EMA is starting to turn up. Our RSI is getting back up into the 60s. I like the euro long, no question about it. I like the Swiss franc even better. The thing I like about the Swiss franc is it's just been churning higher. It's been running higher, basing, running higher, pulling back, running higher. Everything looks good here on Swiss franc. So I think dollar, euro, Swiss franc are a clear buy. The yen, technically speaking, is a buy, but I'm just not going to touch it yet. I'll come check back on this thing next week. I'll check on yen. But right here, ending out the week, I'm going to be a little wary of the yen. It's very clear what to buy, but let's talk about what to sell in currencies. Here we have the pound. And you can see here the pound has been really range bound. Now, yes, it's a little weak at the moment. EMAs going lower, parabolic stars going lower, RSIs below 50. So I can't say that this is a zero. It's more like a -1. Okay, it's going down fairly slowly. If we check over with the CAD, we're really seeing the same thing. Yes, the CAD is definitely going lower. Everything is saying it's going lower, but at the rate it's going lower, it's just not a great sell. Now, we talk a lot about energy at Maverick, and we use the term velocity. And the velocity right now is very little in the CAD. We want to trade things that are having high velocity or we expect are going to have high velocity in the future. This one just isn't there. So let's take a look at the last two, Aussie and Kiwi. Here's our velocity. Here's our velocity right here. And you can see Aussie is breaking down some key levels. We've got some support here. Once it breaks this, there is just no more support until really down here, which is about, 1.5% lower. So Aussie looks like a great short here. I like it, but sorry, Kiwi is the better short. We just broke down here. We just had weakness. The Kiwi's been very weak. And now we had this little base here for a couple days. Now we're breaking below it. So for me, Kiwi's number 1, Aussie's number 2 on the short side. There hasn't been a lot of movement on our velocity score, but let's update the changes. Euro has strengthened. So euro, Swiss franc, and dollar are all +3s. They're all viable trades. The yen, it's a +2. Like I said, I'm wary of it. I'm going to be checking in next week on yen. I'm just going to forget about it for the rest of the week. And pound and CAD have moved down a little bit, but they're still not the best shorts. Aussie and Kiwi remain at a -3. So it's easy. We pair up euro, Swiss franc, dollar against Aussie and Kiwi. So let's take a look at those possible trades. Our favorite trade for the week was Kiwi Swiss franc, and it's been a great one. If you could take a look back here, this was, we started at 58.80 was where we started the week at, saying, hey, you want to be short here. And here we are down at 57.30. That is about a 2.5% drop here. This thing is very weak. So take a look at it. Is there more to go? The answer is probably yes. We've got this little low base that's formed in this area. We spent 2 days there basing, and here we're dropping again. Where do you get down in this? There's a question. How long are you going to hold it? We are running into the weekend. So if you are not going to hold this over the weekend, then I think you've got to go down to some shorter time frames and just say, okay, here's an hour chart. Here's a 30-minute chart. Really build your entries off of some shorter time frames, fully knowing that you're not going to be holding these for a couple of days. You're going to be holding these for a couple hours. But the momentum is there to the short side. No question about it. Let's take a look at Kiwi dollar. Kiwi dollar is actually looking much better. As you can see right here, right now on a 30-minute chart, it has momentum. On a 1-hour chart, we have just broken down this support, this low base that we formed here for 2 to 3 days. It's got momentum to the downside. So if you take a look at it, Kiwi versus dollar, Kiwi versus Swiss franc, Kiwi dollar looks better. Now remember, whenever you are having a hard time deciding, I want to be short Kiwi, but I don't know if I want to be long dollar, Swiss franc, or euro. It's actually very easy. You pair up the dollar against the Swiss franc. And you take a look at this chart and say, okay, would I rather be long or short this currency cross? Now, if I take a look at this on a 4-hour chart, you can see there hasn't been any difference between the two. If I go to a daily chart, boy, you can see over the last couple of days, there's been no difference between the two. So when I take a look at this, I say to myself, hey, you know what? Dollar and Swiss franc have been about the same strength. There really is no advantage one or the other. But when I take a look at the charts, Kiwi dollar looks like a better short to me than Kiwi Swiss franc. But don't forget about euro, because euro is like, hey, what about me? Let's take a look at euro dollar. So the question is it better to trade the euro rather than the dollar or the Swiss franc? Here's a daily chart, and you can see over the past 3 days, we've had a tiny bit more strength in euro. We take a look here at euro dollar on a 4-hour chart. You can see it really hasn't mattered either. I don't think there's really any call here to be made between which is stronger, euro, dollar, or Swiss franc. If you had to give a nod to like a very short term, I'm going to go down to a 30-minute chart here on euro dollar. You could see in the very short term that the euro is actually the strongest of the three. But I think we're talking about 0.1% difference. They're either all going to work or none of them are going to work. Let's take a look at one last currency cross. Let's take a look at Euro Aussie. So here's Euro Aussie. I'm going to go back out to a 4-hour chart. And you can see we're just breaking out of some resistance here at 148.70. This one's got a lot of momentum. We like to trade the things that are moving now. And especially if we aren't going to hold over the weekend, we want to make sure we're getting in something that's moving now. This has got the momentum. I like this trade right here, right now at 149.15. Let's see if we can find some target here. Yeah, we're breaking out of some resistance here. I think the next target on this one is 150.70. Now, I doubt it's going to get there. That would be a full 1.2% run over the next 24 hours, which it could do it. I think you've got to be a little bit more realistic. Let's cut that down to maybe 150. But that's still a big enough trade to make it worth it on Euro Aussie long. To wrap this up, we think these equity markets are very likely to break support and continue to fall tomorrow, leading to some real negativity on Monday. Maybe Monday is a very good bottom on equities. Maybe it's Tuesday, but we see a lot more weakness going ahead than strength. Be careful with the yen. We're going to be doing our currency room over the weekend. We're going to be talking a lot about the yen and the intervention. We think that you have to really lay off yen. It's going to be really, really twitchy. What I mean by that is it's likely going to move up a little bit more, but at any time news come out and blow your trade. We don't like that kind of activity when we have very good trends going on in euro, dollar, and Swiss franc. They're just clear, smooth trends. A lot easier to trade those. Stick with those currencies. Those are going to be the ones that have done the best. They're still doing the best. Once they change, we'll jump ship. Until that time, we're going to milk these for as many pips as we can get. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you later. Goodbye.